All right, let's get right into it. We're about to tackle a question that's, well, it's a big one. It sits right at the crossroads of history, language, and religion. You know, it's a topic that often gets boiled down to a simple yes or no. But the real story, the one we can piece together from ancient stones and the very DNA of language, oh, it's so much more fascinating than that.
So, here it is, the big question we're unpacking today. Before the Prophet Muhammad, before Islam as we know it, was anyone out there in the deserts of Arabia looking up at the sky and praying to Allah? I mean, was that a name people already knew, or was it just their word for any old god? To figure this out, we have to become part historian, part linguistic detective. So let's jump in and follow the clues.
Okay, so our first stop on this journey isn't some dusty archaeological dig. Nope, we're starting with the very code of language itself. See, before we can even ask who or what Allah was, we've got to understand what the word Allah actually is. And trust me, its roots go way, way deeper than most people think. So let's break this down, because it's actually pretty simple when you see it. The word Allah didn't just appear out of thin air. Not at all. Linguists are all pretty much in agreement on this one. It's a contraction, a smooshing together of two Arabic words, al, which means the, and ilāh, which means a god or a deity. Put them together, al-ilāh, and what do you get? The God. It's a title, a definitive one, right from the get-go. And this is where it gets really, really cool. That word ilāh isn't some random standalone term. It's part of a huge ancient family of languages, the Semitic languages. I mean, just look at this. The Arabic ilāh is basically a cousin to the Hebrew Elohah, which you see all over the Hebrew Bible, and it's also related to the Aramaic Allah, which, was the language Jesus spoke. They all come from the same ancient root. So the word for God in Arabia wasn't weird or new, it was just part of how everyone in that part of the world talked.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that the word itself, the sounds, the letters, the raw material of Allah, it's not uniquely Islamic. It was already there. It was part of the cultural furniture of the region for centuries. Arabic-speaking Christians and Jews were using it to refer to God long before the 7th century. This is our foundation, our starting point. Now, let's see if we can find this word out in the wild.
Okay, so we've got the language evidence, but words can be slippery, right? Can we find this name in the physical world? To do that, we have to turn to something called epigraphy, which is the fancy word for studying inscriptions. We're talking about voices from the past, literally carved in stone, and believe me, they have quite a story to tell.
Right. I want you to meet our star witnesses, the Sophistetic inscriptions. Picture this. For hundreds of years before Islam, nomadic Arabs are traveling through the harsh deserts of what's now Jordan and northern Saudi Arabia. And as they travel, they leave messages behind, tens of thousands of them, carved into black volcanic rock. It's basically ancient graffiti. They're not writing epic poems, they're carving things like, so-and-so is here, memorials for loved ones, and crucially for us, prayers. This is where we find the hard evidence.
And boom, there it is, a direct quote translated right off an ancient rock. Now, the alphabet they used was a little different, so scholars write it as alt. But when you say it out loud, it's almost certainly the ancestor of ilāh or Allah. Now just think about that for a second. This isn't some priest writing a holy book. This is a regular person, probably worried about their animals, their family, their survival, scratching a desperate plea for rain into a rock. They're talking to a god they call al. It's just this incredibly raw human moment.
And it gets even more personal. The name wasn't just for prayers. It was literally part of people's identities. We found pre-Islamic names like Abdallah, which means servant of Allah. And get this, that was the name of the Prophet Muhammad's own father. The fact that people were naming their children after this deity tells you that this wasn't just some abstract term. It was a familiar, important part of their world, deeply woven into the fabric of their families.
Now, this brings us right up to the absolute cutting edge. For the longest time, the clues kind of suggested that Allah might have been a distant, high god without a lot of specific stories. But there's a brand new study from 2025 by a brilliant scholar named Ahmed al-Jalad. He's analyzed an inscription that seems to describe Allah with specific traits, as a creator, as a source of light. This could be the very first pre-Islamic Allah myth we've ever found. If he's right, this is a total game changer. It means the theology was way more developed than we ever knew.
So, we've got the language, we've got the carvings in stone. You'd think that'd be enough to close the case, right? Well, not so fast. This is where it gets messy and honestly, really interesting. Because when you try to put all the pieces together, the experts don't all see the same picture.
The whole debate really boils down to these two camps. On one side, you have scholars who say, look, when someone back then said Allah or Allah, it was just like us saying the God. It's a generic title, not a specific name. But then on the other side, you've got scholars, especially with this new evidence, who are arguing, no, Allah was understood as a specific supreme being. Maybe he was the chief god in a whole pantheon of other deities, but he was the boss.
And the real answer is probably that pre-Islamic Arabia wasn't just one thing. You can't paint it with a single brush. It was this incredible mosaic of tribes and beliefs. In one area, maybe Allah was a distant creator god. In another, maybe people were already moving toward a kind of monotheism, influenced by their Christian and Jewish neighbors. The evidence doesn't give us one neat little answer. It gives us a snapshot of a world that was alive, complex, and changing.
Okay, let's bring it all home. We've dug into the language, we've looked at the graffiti on the rocks, we've waded into the scholarly debates. It's time to pull all these threads together. So, what is the final verdict? What should you really take away from all this? If you remember anything, remember this. 1. The word Allah is ancient. It's been around for a long time. 2. We know for a fact people were using it, nomads, Christians, Jews, you name it, before Islam came along. 3, and this is the absolute key, the theology of Allah, the idea of who and what Allah is, was completely transformed by Islam. It's a perfect story of linguistic continuity meeting a theological revolution. The word stayed, but the meaning changed forever. And that right there is the heart of it. The revolutionary message of early Islam wasn't about inventing a brand new name for God. It was about taking a word people already knew, the God, and giving it a radical new meaning. It was about stripping away all the other gods, all the partners, all the intermediaries, and saying, no, this is it. He is one and He is all. It transformed Allah from being a god or even the chief god into being the one and only God. And so that's the final thought I want to leave you with. How does that happen? How does a common word for a god become the proper name for the one and only God? The evidence we've seen today shows us the before, a world of possibilities. History shows us the after. The story of Allah isn't just about ancient history or religion. It's a powerful story about how a single powerful idea can completely reshape our world, starting with the very words we use.